How do I look?
Like a hood ornament.
Here because you remember that thrilling moment when a young stunt pilot straps on a rocket pack and flies over 1930s Los Angeles. The Rocketeer is a love letter to pulp adventure, Art Deco flair, and the golden age of Hollywood stunt work. You have to think of watching Billy Campbell's Cliff Secord rocket through the skies, feeling that perfect mixture of nostalgia and excitement for a time long before CGI dominated the screen. And then there's Timothy Dalton as the suave yet sinister Neville Sinclair, channeling the charisma of old Hollywood legends. But behind the thrill, the stunts, and the helmet, there's a wildly complicated story of near disasters, real-life dangers, and creative choices that almost derailed the film entirely. Once you hear these 12 weird facts, you'll never look at Cliff's Jetpack the same way again. Let's get into it. Number 12. Disney originally wanted this to launch a franchise. Now, originally Disney dreamt big with The Rocketeer, and when the film was greenlit in the late 1980s, they had their sights set on creating a massive franchise. Screenwriters Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, along with creator Dave Stevens, had mapped out ideas for an entire trilogy, and even signed the lead stars Billy Campbell and Jennifer Connelly for potential sequels. Disney had hoped that The Rocketeer would soar to the same heights as other classic adventures like Indiana Jones. They were so confident, they actually developed a toy line with action figures and prototypes, gearing up for what they believed would be a blockbuster hit. But despite the movie's charm, the box office results did not match the studio's high hopes. The movie didn't make as much money as Disney had hoped for, so plans for sequels and toys were quickly dropped. Years later, Disney brought the character back in animated shows and began talking about possible reboots. Number 11. The helmet design was inspired by 1930s aviation gear. There is a story behind that iconic helmet design that made it so memorable. It was carefully created to look like real aviation gear from the 1930s while adding a touch of classic adventure style. At first, Disney wanted to use a sleek and modern helmet that looked more like something out of NASA, but the movie's director Joe Johnston was determined to stay true to the original character and felt so strongly about it that he even said he would quit if the design were to be changed. His dedication ended up paying off in a big way. That final helmet was designed by Jim Bissell, the production designer, with help from Dave Stevens, who created the original comic. It was a perfect fit for the story, which took place in 1938. That design would be based on the leather and metal helmets worn by pilots before World War II and had a sleek and smooth shape which matched the time period and showed off the creative Art Deco style. Number 10. Timothy Dalton modeled his villain after Errol Flynn. Timothy Dalton brought an unforgettable level of charisma to his role as Neville Sinclair, the sinister villain of the story. Sinclair was deliberately modeled after the larger-than-life persona of 1930s movie star Errol Flynn. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The filmmakers took inspiration from Flynn's famous adventurous roles like Robin Hood, adding a darker side to the character by including rumors from a controversial book called Errol Flynn: The Untold Story. The book made shocking claims saying that Flynn was actually secretly a Nazi spy.
I want that rocket, Eddie. Not next week, not tomorrow, now.
This mixture of Flynn's glamorous Hollywood image and wartime rumors would help to create Sinclair's complex personality. To everyone, he seemed like the perfect movie star, when secretly he hid a dark side as a Nazi spy which made him dangerous despite his friendly appearance. Number 9. The jetpack was mostly practical, not CGI. The flashy CGI has made things in modern movies seem almost effortless, but surprisingly, the film's jetpack sequences didn't rely heavily on computer-generated imagery like today's films. Instead, the production team used a mixture of practical techniques and detailed miniatures in order to bring the action to life.
I wouldn't touch that if I were you.
For most of the flying shots, they used stunt rigs with wires and harnesses in order to suspend a stuntman beneath a helicopter. Clever camera work and speed adjustments helped sell the illusion of high-speed flight, but what really made these scenes magical was the way that industrial light and magic worked to enhance the practical footage. They added visual details like jet flames that were hand-drawn frame by frame, blending in the live action with animated effects and miniature models. For longer or trickier scenes, the crew even used stop-motion miniatures of the character and Jetpack, and these tiny figures were filmed one frame at a time and then combined with live footage to craft seamless interactions. Number 8. Billy Campbell was cast over bigger stars for authenticity. It may be weird that someone like Billy Campbell, who was relatively unknown at the time, had managed to beat out a whole lineup of Hollywood giants for the lead role of Cliff Secord. But believe it or not, heavyweights like Johnny Depp, Kevin Costner, Kurt Russell, and even Emilio Estevez were considered or auditioned for the part, and Disney executives were pushing hard for a big-name actor to anchor the film, hoping it would guarantee success. However, director Joe Johnston and creator Dave Stevens had a different vision. They looked past all the hype of the A-list fame and felt that Campbell was the perfect fit.
Yeah, and what, wait 6 months? A year? We made a living with that plane.
Well, maybe it's time to get a real job.
Whoa.
His look and down-to-earth charm had made him feel like the perfect Cliff Secord, just like the hero from the comic books. He didn't need the charm of Hollywood stars in order to shine. The director stood his ground and convinced Disney that Campbell's sincerity and classic style were exactly what the movie needed. Number 7. The movie tested poorly with kids, despite being PG. The film was released as a PG-rated movie, which might make you think that it was designed to be a fun adventure for kids, but here's where it gets interesting. When it hit theaters, it didn't quite click with younger audiences. Critics and parents would notice that while the movie was appropriate for kids, it wasn't all that exciting. And why? A lot of it had to do with the tone and the style. The story takes place in the 1930s and was made as a love letter to old-fashioned serials and classic adventure films, something that really resonated more with adults who appreciated the nostalgia. For kids, though, the slower pacing and simple storytelling did not pack the same punch as the fast and flashy action movies that they were used to. Even with Disney's big marketing push, including tie-in products and promotions, the movie just didn't perform very well at the box office, and it turns out that the movie's PG rating may have set the wrong expectations. Number 6. Nazis were controversial villains for a Disney film. When a film uses Nazis as the primary villains, it immediately evokes a sense of danger. But for a Disney movie, this was an unexpected choice. Typically known for its family-friendly adventures, the studio went into darker territory with this storyline. The movie takes place in 1938 with the world on the edge of war. Neville Sinclair seems like a charming villain at first, but there's a shocking twist.
The Valentine gang has only hired muscle. They're working for a Nazi agent.
He's really a secret Nazi spy. He's on a dangerous mission to steal a powerful rocket pack, and this advanced technology could help the German army in the coming war.
The rocket, Secord.
It might be weird because Disney movies don't usually have villains like Nazis. Action films like Indiana Jones have used them before, but never Disney. It made the story feel more serious. The Nazis wanted to use the rocket pack for war, which raised the stakes and made it feel less like a children's movie. Number 5. Howard Hughes was almost written into the script. Howard Hughes was not part of the original comic book story, but he was added to the movie screenplay. The comic, created by Dave Stevens, had a totally different inventor for the rocket pack, and that character was inspired by Doc Savage, a famous pulp hero from the 1930s adventure stories. However, when Disney got the rights to make the film, they couldn't use Doc Savage because they didn't have the legal rights, but instead, they swapped him out for Howard Hughes, a real-life aviation legend and Hollywood tycoon.
I'll remind you boys that I don't work for the government. I cooperate at my discretion.
Howard Hughes was a famous engineer and pilot during the movie's 1938 setting, also known for creating inventions like the famous Spruce Goose airplane. That way, Disney changed the Rocketeer story to feel more real and connected to the exciting world of pre-World War II aviation. This change may not have been part of the original plan, but it did make the story even more cool and gave it a more authentic touch. Number 4. Sets reused old Hollywood backlots. Although the film built a lot of custom sets to bring 1938 Los Angeles to life, there's something strange about how the production also used old Hollywood backlots. Imagine walking through the streets of 1930s LA with its vintage storefronts and urban charm. However, part of the film's downtown scenes were actually filmed on the famous New York Street backlot at Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank. This spot has been dressed up to look like a historical city setting for tons of movies over the years, and instead of creating massive new sets, the filmmakers cleverly used the existing location to capture the feel of 1930s city architecture. But that's not all. Some of the sets from the film didn't vanish after it ended. For example, the famous Bulldog Cafe facade wasn't only made for the movie, it would later be used as part of a theme park tour at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Number 3. Marketing didn't know how to sell a retro hero. Despite a big promotional push, Disney struggled to figure out how to present the Rocketeer to audiences. The movie's campaign leaned heavily on its stunning Art Deco visuals, capturing the 1930s pulp vibe perfectly, but it left people scratching their heads. Was it an action-packed superhero film, a fun kid's adventure, or maybe it was a period piece drama? Nobody really seemed to know for sure, and that confusion may have cost it dearly. Even though the original poster looked like a work of art, it didn't really tell audiences what the movie was about or who was in it. Disney quickly reworked it to show off the cast, including Timothy Dalton, Billy Campbell, and Jennifer Connelly, but by that time, the mixed signals had already made its impact. To make it even worse, the comic that the film was based on wasn't very well known, and without big-name actors to draw crowds, it was tough to grab attention. Number 2. It's now considered a Proto-MCU superhero film. It might be weird that a movie released all the way back in 1991 is now considered a precursor to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At first, it may seem like nothing more than a nostalgic pulp adventure, but when you have a closer look, it begins to feel like a blueprint for the kinds of superhero films that we see today. Long before Iron Man kickstarted the MCU in 2008, the Rocketeer had already laid down many of the building blocks that would define the modern comic book era. It told a classic origin story. An ordinary man stumbles upon extraordinary powers, confronts clear antagonists, and then grows into a heroic figure. But the connections don't end there. The movie's retro style feels similar to what the MCU would perfect years later, and here's an interesting twist. The director also directed Captain America: The First Avenger in 2011. That movie became a key part of the MCU, so some people might say that it was luck, but both films mix in old-fashioned charm with heartfelt stories. Number 1. The film used an authentic Enigma machine that actually never made it to the movie. The weirdest fact is that filmmakers actually shot a scene featuring a real World War II era Enigma encryption machine. For those of you who don't know, this is the legendary cipher device that was used by Nazi Germany in order to send out secret messages. This piece of history was included as a key prop in the movie in order to boost its authenticity. The scene involved the villain, Neville Sinclair, using the machine to send a coded message to Berlin, tying the movie's action to real-world espionage techniques of the 1940s. Despite the historical connection and effort it took to incorporate the genuine artifact into the film, the scene did not make it into the final cut. It was left out due to running time constraints and decisions to maintain the movie's overall pacing. Now be sure you smash that like button if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe so that you know when we upload another video like this. Got any recommendations? Leave them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.